I've replayed this night in my head more times than I can count, and even now, years later, I still get a pit in my stomach when I think about how close we came to not making it home. This happened about 4 years ago. My girlfriend at the time, Stacey, and I were driving back from a weekend trip visiting her aunt. It was late, probably close to 2 in the morning, and we decided to take a back road shortcut instead of the highway. It was one of those long, empty stretches of road where the trees press in close on both sides, and there aren't any streetlights for miles. At first, everything was fine. Then the car started sputtering. I remember joking about it, saying something like, "Don't you dare break down out here." But a few seconds later, the engine lost power completely. I barely had enough momentum to pull onto the shoulder before the car died. We sat there in silence for a moment. Emily tried her phone first. No service. I checked mine. Same thing. Dead zone. That's when I noticed it. Up on a hill about a 1/4 mile ahead, partially hidden by trees, was a house. It was old, with a steep roof and dark windows, but I could clearly make out a faint glow coming from inside. Stacey immediately suggested we go ask to use their phone. I hesitated. I don't consider myself paranoid, but I've always been cautious, especially in situations like that. Still, standing on the side of a dark road with no service didn't feel like a better option. Before getting out, I reached into the glove compartment, grabbed my 9mm and tucked it on my waist. Stacey noticed and gave me a look. "Do you really think that's necessary?" she asked. "I hope it's not," I said, "but I'd rather have it and not need it." We locked the car and started walking toward the house. The closer we got, the more off it felt. The yard was overgrown and the weeds went up to our knees. There seemed to be no sign of life. The front door didn't have a porch light, just darkness. I knocked anyway. Considering where the house was located, this wasn't too surprising. For several seconds, nothing happened. Stacey shifted uncomfortably beside me, and I was just about to suggest we head back when the door creaked open. A man stood there, staring at us. He looked to be in his late 50s or early 60s. Tall, thin, with sunken eyes and a face that looked permanently tired. He didn't smile. "Yes," he said flatly. I explained our situation, trying to sound calm and friendly. He didn't respond right away, just stared at us, like he was deciding something. Then, slowly, he stepped aside. "Come in." I didn't want to, but Stacey was already stepping forward, thanking him. I followed, immediately noticing how dark it was inside. There were no lights. The entire house was lit by candles. They were on shelves, on the floor, and on tables. The first thing I noticed was the door. There was no lock or deadbolt, just an old handle that didn't even look functional. That alone made my chest tighten slightly. I chalked it up to overthinking, however. The man closed the door behind us, not aggressively, but firmly, and gestured toward the living room. "Sit," he said. We did. The furniture was old and mismatched, and the air smelled like dust and something sour. The room was barely visible, only lit by a few candles. As the man moved around, there was a long, awkward silence. I attempted to break the silence by joking, asking if the man was saving power, hence the candles. He looked at me, his expression not changing, and said, "Power's out." I just nodded. Before I could say anything else, the man started asking questions. Where were we coming from? Why were we out so late? Were we alone? His tone wasn't conversational. It felt like an interview. I gave vague answers, deliberately avoiding details. When I asked if we could use his phone, he paused. "I don't have one," he said. Okay, so he was old-fashioned then. But the candles, the door with no lock, his weird behavior, and now this. Something wasn't adding up. My pulse started pounding in my ears. That's when I noticed movement in the corner of the room. At first, I thought it was shadows, but then I realized there were two shapes sitting on the far couch. Two dark silhouettes, barely visible in the candlelight. They hadn't spoken, hadn't moved. They were just watching us. I opened my mouth to say something when a sound came from upstairs. Footsteps, heavy ones. Then another set. Then another. 3 men came down the stairs slowly, one by one. All of them quiet. All of them staring straight at us. None of them smiled. None of them spoke. They spread out naturally, blocking the exits without even trying to hide it. That's when my instincts screamed at me. This was wrong. We were in danger, and if we didn't leave now, we weren't leaving at all. I stood up suddenly, pulling Stacy with me. The man who answered the door stepped closer. "You just got here," he said. "Sit back down." That's when I drew my pistol. I didn't point it at anyone, not yet. But the second it came into sight, the entire room froze. The flickering candles illuminated their faces just enough for me to see something shift in their expressions. Surprise, anger. Stacy gasped, gripping my arm. "No one move," I said, louder than I thought possible. "We're leaving." For a moment, no one did anything. Then one of the men upstairs took a step forward. I raised the gun. He stopped. We backed toward the door, my eyes darting between all of them, terrified one would rush us. The man closest to the door moved aside, just enough for us to reach it. I grabbed the handle and yanked. The door opened. We ran. I don't remember my feet touching the ground. I don't remember looking back. We sprinted down the hill, back toward the car, hearts pounding, lungs burning. Now what happened next, I can only describe as pure luck and coincidence. There was a man who looked in his late 20s inspecting the car. He saw our car improperly parked on the shoulder and went to investigate. We told him about what just happened, and he offered us a ride to a gas station a few miles away. We thanked him profusely, and I called roadside assistance, my hands shaking so badly I had to switch the phone to speaker. While we waited, I kept watching the road behind us, expecting headlights to appear with that creepy man inside. Nothing happened, and the car was eventually fixed. Fast forward to now, I'm okay. But the truth is, I don't think I was okay for a long time after this incident. Because every now and then, when I drive down an empty road at night, I think about that house. I was 16 when this happened. It was summer, school was out, and my friends and I were stuck in that awkward phase where we were too old for playgrounds, but too young to do anything real. Most nights we just drove around, listening to music, talking about nothing, trying to make the hours pass faster. That's when my friend Tyler brought up an abandoned indoor water park. It was on the edge of town, and it wasn't something that was hidden. Pretty much all the townsfolk knew about it, because you tend to drive past it at some point. People said it shut down after it became too expensive to maintain, and ever since, it's just been left there, out in the open. My friends and I knew about the water park, but I guess we were never really bored enough to get up and go there. Anyway, me, Tyler, and my other friend, Scott, decided we were going to go to the water park at midnight. It was an easy decision, as we quite literally had nothing else to do. By the time we parked nearby, it was close to midnight. We left the car on the side road and walked the rest of the way, laughing and shoving each other, trying to act braver than we felt. From up close, the water park looked enormous. I still couldn't believe how something like this was so close to town and just out there for anyone to go inside. That thought was gone when we saw the front and back entrance had been boarded up. We used our phone flashlights to help us find a half-broken window we crouched through. And just like that, we were inside. The window seemed to allow us access to all the big water slides and main attractions, basically bypassing the front lobby. It was pretty huge. The wave pool sat front and center, completely drained and stained dark from years of grime. Artificial palm trees drooped over the empty basin. Lounge chairs were scattered everywhere, some overturned, some broken. A lifeguard stand leaned sideways at the pool's edge, missing half its steps. We explored slowly, checking out the concession stands and locker rooms. Many lockers stood open. Some still had random items still inside, stuff like sandals and empty bottles. Eventually, we made our way to the slide tower. So many slides had graffiti plastered all over them, but the area itself was in pretty fine condition. The slides twisted high above us. The tallest one spiraled almost to the ceiling, its staircase disappearing into darkness. We all looked at each other and had the idea to climb to the top. The metal stairs clanged loudly with every step, the railing cold under my hand. As we climbed higher, I started to get this feeling of dread. It was sudden, and I thought it was because the stairs were so noisy. Maybe we'd alert someone. The feeling only got worse as we got higher, but I didn't say anything. When we finally reached the top platform, the only way down was obvious. The stairs we'd just come up, or the slide itself. At the top, we took some pictures and just leaned against the railing, talking to each other. In our oblivion, we suddenly heard the all too familiar sound of clanging. the exact clanging steps of the stairs we just climbed. We froze in unison, unsure of what to do. Scott thought it was security, but what security doesn't make their presence known? I peered from the railing towards the stairs, but my phone flashlight was too weak to actually see anything. All I could do was just listen to the metal clanging get closer and closer. It was as if whoever was walking up the stairs was trying to be quiet and muffled their steps. The only exit was back down the stairs. We could have slid down the slide, but it was just a steep, minimally angled circular drop downwards, and with no water to cushion us, it was too dangerous. Without thinking, I shouted, "We have guns. If you come up here, we will shoot you." The clanging stopped abruptly. Then we heard undeniable footsteps running. They weren't going down the stairs. They were going up. We had no choice. I didn't think. I just dropped into the slide. Tyler and Scott followed. I slammed into the sides as I flew down, spinning and scraping my arms. It felt endless. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I shot out of the slide and hit the ground hard, knocking the wind out of me. Tyler and Scott came shooting out the slide moments after me, and we ran for the window we came in from. We didn't hear anyone chasing after us, or any voices, but crawling back through that window was all the more terrifying. As we were making our way back to the car, we noticed two hooded figures about 100 feet from us. They were moving at a steady pace, and I could see they were conversing with each other. We weren't taking any chances. We bolted for the car and peeled out of there. I saw those people just standing there from the rear view mirror, staring at us. Nothing happened after this, and we actually look back on it as quite an exhilarating experience. We never explored abandoned buildings ever again. I was 15 when this happened, and at the time, it honestly didn't feel like a bad idea. It felt like one of those things you do when you're bored out of your mind and trying to make a normal night memorable. My parents were out of town for the weekend, and my friend Jake was sleeping over. We'd already done everything we could think of, played video games until our eyes hurt, watched random YouTube videos, and even walked around the neighborhood for a bit. By around midnight, we were lying on the floor of my room, staring at the ceiling, complaining about how boring everything was. That's when Jake brought up the old farmhouse. It sat alone in the middle of a huge open field, about a 10-minute walk from my house. Everyone in town knew about it. It had been abandoned for as long as we could remember, and during the day, it just looked old and sad. At night, though, it was different. The place felt exposed, like it was sitting there waiting to be noticed. We joked about it for a few minutes, daring each other, until eventually the idea stopped being a joke. We only had one flashlight, which was my dad's, so we told ourselves we'd just look around for a few minutes and slip out the back door. The walk there felt longer than usual. The field stretched out endlessly, and without streetlights, the farmhouse looked straight out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Up close, the place was worse. The windows were broken, the paint was peeling, and the front door was slightly open, creaking softly as the wind pushed it back and forth. We stepped inside, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. It was empty for the most part, and many of the rooms looked how you'd expect an abandoned place to look. A bit underwhelmed, we carried on until we found the stairs leading up. Jake insinuated we said we'd only look around for a few minutes, then leave, but I convinced him it would only take a second, then we'd be gone. He sighed, but agreed. The steps groaned loudly under our weight. At the top, there was a narrow hallway with a few bedrooms branching off. The rooms were mostly empty, just like the downstairs. All the rooms were identical to one another, just a bed and a small cabinet tucked in the corner. We were in the furthest bedroom from the stairs when we heard it. The front door. It creaked open. Jake froze and looked at me. I listened carefully, waiting for footsteps or voices, but nothing followed. "It's probably just the wind," I whispered. We stood there for a few seconds, convincing ourselves that made sense, as this did happen when we walked up to the house. Then the door creaked again. This time, it closed, then opened, then closed again, slowly, deliberately. My heart started pounding. Wind doesn't do that. I turned off my light and we moved quietly into the hallway and leaned over the railing at the top of the stairs. There was a man standing at the front door. All I could make out was that he was wearing dark clothes, with his back to us as he slowly opened and shut the door, over and over again, like he was testing it. He was calm, almost in a trance-like state. I don't know what scared me more, how quiet he was, or how comfortable he seemed in that house. Jake grabbed my arm and pulled me back. We scrambled down the hallway, trying to think of somewhere, anywhere, to hide. There wasn't much. There were no closets big enough, so it was either under the bed or behind the door. We decided to use the darkness to our advantage, and each hid behind a bedroom door. Hiding under the bed seemed too risky and obvious. We each slipped into a bedroom and pressed ourselves behind a door and waited. The sounds finally stopped, and there was a long, painful silence. It felt like I was standing there for hours. That's when the situation went from bad to worse. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, heavy. Each step made the wood groan loudly, and it felt like the sound was echoing straight into my chest. I held my breath, terrified the man would hear it. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs, then stopped. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the footsteps started again, moving down the hallway. He paused outside different rooms, lingering like he was listening. When he reached my door, he stopped. I could see his shadow through the crack. He pushed the door open. The hinges creaked as he stepped inside. He walked a few steps into the room, his silhouette moving farther away from me. I could literally smell him. He smelt rancid. He stopped walking and just stood in the middle of the room. I was frozen. I couldn't move. I knew if I didn't make my escape now, he'd turn around and see me. I slipped out from behind the door and didn't even try to be quiet. I just ran for it. Jake must have heard me because he came running as soon as I did. I don't think either of us ran that fast our whole lives. We burst out the front door and sprinted the whole way home without stopping once. We locked the doors, turned on every light, and sat there, shaking, listening for footsteps that never came. We never told our parents or went back to that farmhouse. But sometimes, when I look out across that field at night, I think about how calm that man was and how close we came to being trapped upstairs with him.